All right, good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, April 29th. I hope you're doing okay. In Toronto here, it's about 8 degrees, overcast, a little bit rainy, but we've got a heater going in the polytunnel little greenhouse, so that's a happy thing. I want to run down the course outline for the webinar series that's starting this Friday, May 1st, so that's in 2 days. The webinar series is called Cult Dynamics in Yoga and Buddhism, Recognition, Recovery, and Resilience. Now, it's 8 consecutive Fridays. It's 4 p.m. Eastern time. That's the time for the live broadcast. So that would be like a quiet afternoon on the West Coast or a cozy evening in Europe, and maybe a sunny Saturday morning down under. But regardless of when the live broadcast is, if you're registered for the course, you can have access to the webinars at any point indefinitely. The entire course runs for 16 hours of presentation and discussion. There's plentiful resources that are offered through Google Classroom, and the tuition is set at 150 Canadian dollars, but it's fully COVID-19 negotiable. And all you have to do is send me an email to request a fee reduction, and we'll work out whatever works for you. My email address is threadsofyoga@gmail.com. Now, you'll also see the registration link in the notes for this video. And I'll run through the course outline, but I want to, first of all, just acknowledge the incredible changes that we are all going through. You'll see that I opened this course for registration at the beginning of March. And then, of course, 2 weeks later, everything changed as the pandemic began to lock everything down. And maybe actually it's not that everything changed, but a lot of things came into sharper relief. And in the spirit of modeling how I believe content really has to address changing circumstance and has to be responsive, I'd like to offer first these 3 lenses of relevance for this course, given the pandemic and the lockdown. So first of all, when studying how some people get recruited into cults, researchers use a term called situational vulnerability. Now, this would be any temporary circumstance that destabilizes an individual and makes them vulnerable to any kind of group that would pose as a safe haven. Now, the pandemic is creating situational vulnerability on a massive scale. COVID-19 puts the majority of the planet's population in instability and uncertainty. And the prediction from the cult research would be that this would be a boom time for cultic organizations, which prey upon vulnerability by offering promising ideals and totalizing solutions, usually through charismatic leadership. Now, as we know, the present harm of the shutdowns are not evenly distributed, and the impacts have little to do with personal psychology. And this too mirrors the context in which cult recruitment happens. In times of stress, not everyone will be drawn into a given cultic organization, but those who are drawn in are not drawn in because of character flaws or their psychological profiles. People are drawn into toxic groups because the groups capitalize on stress and because the groups lie to their recruited members. Okay, so secondly, COVID-19 is an acute event that allows us to assess our capacity for critical thinking, collective care. It allows us to examine the nature of authority, and I would say crucially, the difference between competent service and charisma. Now, with regard to this last point, consider what we see in the spectacle of Dr. Fauci sharing a stage with Trump. Now, the cult leader may be competent at manipulation and abuse, but his authority is fully mobilized. His authority is self-generated, rather, and magnified by charisma. Now, when that mechanism is fully mobilized, not only does the leader not need to speak truthfully or act with empathy, he can actually make a virtue out of lies and cruelty. He can and will exploit his followers for as long as it works. So it's extraordinary that Fauci has been allowed to stand there for so long, because he's actually demonstrating what authority conferred by consensus reality and a peer network looks like. And that's the key to um, competence and service. Also, he allows in outside information, which is exactly what the cult leader cannot do. Now, if we extrapolate that to the difference between the yoga cult leader who has no scope of practice